do we need? All we need is full coverage. And you can get that in one coat many times, but we put two on just for good measure to make sure that we've got thorough coverage. Once the black base is applied, the wait before the Kameleon colors is just about the time it takes to mix it. So there isn't a great wait. But make sure you're getting underneath. You know, the great thing about this bag system in the gun is it allows us to paint upside down with that gun. You're not going to find that you're able to do that with other equipment, other than a pressure pot, of course. And we generally don't recommend a pressure pot when you're working with this material because it does change the characteristics of the paint. There is something to be said about the HVLP guns because of the fine atomization. Look at that ability to paint upside down. Certainly a nice factor when you're doing the difficult to spray areas. The coverage is instantaneous with the black base. Now, going around the gas area, we use a cardboard masker to just make sure we don't get excessive overspray on the outside. This is a good idea. And then make sure you get the black around the edge where that goes. And we'll proceed with this as we go through the Kameleon stages as well. All right, we're going through our walk now. And this is critical. Just take it nice and easy. Don't get upset. Remember that these panels change a little bit. The quarter panel's a little wider than the front fender. And so keep that in consideration when you're doing it. Now we're going to head, we've taken our kettle here, which we've already pre-mixed the two Kameleon colors. Now it's time to reduce them. But before we do that, we're carefully going to pour a quart full. We're going to put 2 quarts in the mixing container. And then we're going to follow up with a quart of the reducer. We're going to spend some time stirring, obviously, to make sure that things are well mixed. And the other thing about putting reducer in this can, make sure that we get every drop of our Kameleon. We're going to replace the bag in the spray gun with a clean, fresh bag. We're going to blow thinner through the gun to make sure there's no left residue from the former black base. And we're going to strain into the gun cup. Now, these are not catalyzed. A TC23 is adequate for spraying this product. Not so with a catalyzed product unless you're in an extremely well-ventilated booth. And our booth is extremely well-ventilated. We pull with full vent opening 100 lineal feet of air per minute. So we really move a lot of air through the booth. And air movement going by the vehicle is what dries the paint. So if you're painting in an open room, you must use the fastest reducer that you're comfortable with based on your shop condition. Again, checking our pattern. It's a good idea to check your pattern each time to make sure that there's nothing that's happened to that air cap clogging it. Now here's our first coat of Kameleon, and we want that to go on wet over the black base using a tight pattern overlap. In other words, with a 6-inch pattern, using a 75% pattern overlap, our increment would be 2 inches. You'll notice I move the gun about 2 inches each pass. And that's critical because if you take a larger step, you can streak the job. And as we said earlier, it's certainly a lot easier to streak the job over a full black base than it would be over a mixed gray base. So keep that in mind when you're doing your base. Base it on the size of the object. On motorcycles, I would almost always use a black base. Why? Because you get immediate coverage over the black base. In fact, 2 coats get you coverage almost to the maximum. We put the third one on just for drill, really, to make sure we've got the good coverage. Notice how nice and wet these coats are going on. I'm holding the gun close. I'm using a tight pattern overlap. I'm making sure that I get the edges, the corners, using that tight pattern overlap. Spend time in the license area. Get underneath. You can turn the gun upside down with that bag system. Makes it really nice for getting those underneath areas. Again, wet it. Make sure that that first coat goes on wet. If you blotch the first coat, it'll carry through the job. So it's one of the most critical coats. Again, the more gray the system is, the easier it is. Now here's the walk. Paying close attention, tight pattern overlap. Take your time. Watch your air hose. You don't want to step on your air hose, which shuts off the air supply, and it can literally spit some paint on the side of the vehicle. So make sure that hose control is very much in your vocabulary, especially when you're going for the walk. And keep the gun parallel, the air cap parallel. As you go down to the lower parts of the car, you'll see me either over grip the gun or make very positive that I'm maintaining that parallel. And you'll never see me point the gun the way I reach. I maintain the parallel not only top to bottom, but side to side. This is critical during the application, but it's not rocket science. You can see that I'm a human being, and I do move up and down a little bit as I'm walking. We're not talking critical, super critical here, but just have it in your mind that you're going to be a robot. You're going to hold this gun properly during the painting process. You're going to pay attention to those proper overlaps, which are so critical to doing the quality kind of work that we want to do. We're working with the best products. We have to move up and be the best painter that we can be. And it just requires concentration. Pay attention to what you're doing. Notice how slow I'm moving, just letting those coats go on. And I'm trying to understand that I'm using a straight line thinking attitude. I'm drawing invisible straight lines through the parts that I'm painting. Maintaining that parallel. When I get to the middle of the wheelhouse, I stop and do between the two wheel openings. Notice me turn that gun down now to maintain that parallel. This is critical, is if I tip that gun up one end or the other, I can put streaks in the job. And we certainly do not want that to happen on a very nice paint job like this, using this type of materials. We want to minimize our mistakes. Turn the gun upside down. The rockers are where a lot of painters make mistakes. They don't get down there and make sure that they've got coverage. It's certainly not a bad idea to bring a creeper in the booth with you and lay down there with a flashlight between coats and make sure that you've gotten good coverage, that you're getting down there. I hear painters call me all the time and they take the car outside and they realize now that they didn't get the coverage they wanted underneath, and they're calling and asking how they do the touch-ups. We've gone ahead and applied our 3 coats of Kameleon. Now it's time to mix our clear. We've got 2 quarts of clear in the mixing vial. We're going ahead and adding our catalyst. Make sure that when you're done pouring the catalyst that you wipe the threads carefully and put the lid back on immediately so that the next time you need that catalyst, it'll be there for you. House of Kolor makes some of the finest clears in the market, and we're VOC compliant in every marketplace, including one of the most difficult, California. In fact, we have one of the finest clears in the marketplace in California at this time. So don't make the mistake of using the clear you have on the shelf. Stick with our brand. A nice medium wet coat for the first coat. Now don't be afraid to make gun adjustments and choke the gun down a little bit. I rarely, if ever, narrow the spray pattern by using the fan control. I'm almost always use the material control knob to narrow my pattern. There are a couple of guns out there that it will not narrow, so make sure you understand your equipment. This first coat is critical. If you over wet the first coat, they can run, because it's many times called the bond coat, because it creates a bond for all other coats. And by putting the first coat on too wet can be very critical. We go ahead and put on our 3 coats of clear, and the next day is here. And now it's time to color sand from our sealer coats, our black base coats, our 3 coats of Kameleon, and our 3 coats of clear. We're now going to eliminate any lint or dirt or orange peel that may have occurred during that painting process. And we're using the 600 grit wet or dry paper here. We've cut it in half. We've gone ahead and done the 3-fold, and our goal now is to completely knock the shine on this vehicle. And that's all the sanding we want to do. Be careful of edges. Never cross an opening. Standard custom painting techniques. If you see a nib, like this one, we come in and take care of it. Notice the grease mark from my finger. That should tell you something. Your hands are continually producing an oil. And so always keep a rag between you and the finish on the opposite hand that you're sanding with. You don't want to transfer those body oils. If you do see them, you can usually sand them out of there. But we're looking for that nice, dry, all the shine gone. On the edges, a very, very light touch is used. Notice how lightly I'm feathering this. It's usually better to do nothing on the edges than to bust through and create a touch-up situation. Now we've gone ahead and over-reduced some clear, and we're going to go ahead and put the final clear coats on. We're going to do another 3 coats, the first one being the medium wet. We want to wet it, but we just want to put it on medium wet, and then we come back with a fuller trigger pull, or more of a trigger pull, and wet it out. To me, this is the most fun part of the painting process, because you really get to see where all your work has gone. We put on a good 3 coats, because this is going to be the clear coat that we're going to be buffing. And with the other 3 coats that we've got on there previously, this is going to be the number of coats that we're going to have for the life of the paint job. And which, by the way, should exceed 10 years. And with care, even longer. Now, immediately after completing the exterior clear, we open the door jambs, apply our bond coat, put on a nice wet final coat. That's the last coat of clear on those jambs. Let's talk about our polish. I really like the new Meguiar's products. Their diamond cut compound brings the shine back fast. Their dual action and swirl-free polish eliminate the fine scratches. Their patented paper and their foam pads. Get to your nearest Meguiar's jobber and pick up the latest tech sheets on these excellent products. This is some of the color sanding equipment that's available. If you're not being paid to color sand and buff the whole car, you can just take the nibs out with this Dynabride sander. It actually just eliminates the nibs. Now we're using the vacuum sanding apparatus, and we're using 1500 grit, and we're using that to sand the large flat areas. What's nice about using this system is it actually does in effect block the system as well as sanding it at the same time. We wipe the dust off, and here we are using the 7000 pad from Meguiar's and using their diamond cut compound and a 1500 RPM polisher, and I think you'll see just how quickly the shine comes back. One application of that and one application of their dual cleaner and swirl remover combination takes the finest little scratches out, eliminates our buffer swirls that we get using the other compound, and then we finish up with a glazing compound using their 9000 pad. And can you see the shine? It's back. All the little nibs that we got during the painting process are gone. We're going to go ahead and assemble the car now, put the door handles back on, the mirrors back on. Here's our completed paint job. Looks good, doesn't it? It was easy. It was fun. Thoroughly enjoy myself doing this kind of work. You never get tired of doing high quality and doing stuff that like this. This job is so amazing. People that come in the shop and walk around it are blown away by the fact that it changes so many colors. We see about 6 different color changes as we walk around the car. Well, we've completed the paint job on the automobile. Now let's talk about some of the other exciting effects we can get using